writers have to wear two hats. They can't wear them at the same time. You have to first write recklessly. I remember complaining to him about how there just was not enough time to write. When was I ever going to find the time to write? I had these little kids. And he said, Sarah, everything that you're doing in your life is writing. Be in it. Be present to what's happening.
Today on the BuildWriting Podcast, I'm joined by Sarah M. Wells, an award-winning writer whose work moves beautifully between nonfiction and poetry. Sarah's most recent book brings those two words together, exploring awe, faith, family, attention, and wonder hidden inside ordinary life. She's also the writer behind Palace in Time, where she reflects on joy, wonder, and the small moments that often become meaningful when we slow down enough to notice them. In this conversation, we'll talk about paying attention as a writer, how observation becomes inspiration, and how Sarah turns lived experience into thoughtful, honest, and memorable writing. Sarah, welcome to the BuildWriting Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, Sarah, congratulations on your latest published book, to say 1 million. I feel like
It's a long title, I know. To say 1 million times, wow.
To say 1 million times, wow. And every time I hear the word million, I always think of money. I don't know.
I know, right?
Yeah. What's the book about? What's the inspiration for it?
Well, the inspiration for writing the book is that I took a road trip with my family to celebrate my turning 40. And the road trip was around the United States to visit a bunch of different national parks that we have here. And underneath that inspiration, because that was really the basis for the book, was exploring all of the ways that wonder and awe show up in our lives. And the desire for me as a mother, as a wife, as a writer, to help people connect with awe and wonder. I really wanted my children to experience nature in a way that would inspire them. And I also just wanted to explore what it meant to be turning 40. It's a momentous birthday, turn of life kind of thing, wanting to think through career changes and relationship changes with my parents and relationship changes with my children and health changes and all of these different moments of change really at midlife that are reason to pause and try to process what's happening, because life goes so quickly and change happens so rapidly. And so it's really a book of trying to do that, trying to pay attention to what's happening in my personal life, in the world around me, and put it into perspective so that I can maybe not be so anxious about what's happening around me and take in the world with a little bit more sense of wonder and mystery than what you might otherwise. It kind of helps to minimize the sense of anxiety and problems in the world when you're like, oh, this piece of rock has been here for 3.8 billion years. I think my short little life is going to be just okay. It's going to be fine. So that's the premise of the book.
That, yeah. Well, your work seems to deeply connected to attention, as you said, wonder, awe, and ordinary life. I'm curious, when did you first realize that paying attention was not just part of writing, but maybe one of the main ways a writer begins?
I think that I've always been a curious person. I'm very curious about the world, and that sense of observation has come relatively naturally to me. Even as a child, I would tend to stop and look at things. Maybe kind of obnoxiously, like staring at a pile of an ant farm in the middle of a field or something, and just be curious about what was happening. So some of my tendencies might be built in to who I am as a person, but I think that more recently, in 2020, with the pandemic, being forced to slow down in my own professional life, and then from a health reasons, I had long COVID. That really kind of made it made me insist upon paying attention and slowing down, because otherwise I was going to burn out and not do well,
Yeah.
So I think those two combinations of things, the fact that I have always been a type of person who likes to stop and look at things and maybe dissect them, maybe just explore them and try to figure out more but what they mean, or if they have any meaning to interpret, or if they're just beautiful for their own sake. And then more recently, just needing to pause and pay attention.
Yeah. What does paying attention mean to you as a writer? It's the word paying attention.
Yeah, I think as a writer, not rushing into the message or the meaning of something, which kind of contradicts what I just said about trying to explore the meaning of something. But as an essayist, the temptation is to jump to the message. Like, I have something I really want to tell you about what's happening in this moment.
Yeah.
But sometimes when we sit and pay attention to an image or something in nature or a piece of art and really describe what's happening, take a closer look at what's happening, it reveals more to us than what we may have brought of our own accord. So I can look at something and then be like, oh yeah, that's a tree, and then move on with my life. Or I could really take a closer look at what's happening to that tree right now. Why is it leaning this particular way? What has happened to it?
Yeah.
And how is that similar to my own life or what's happening in the world? And so that kind of paying attention is just being more aware as a writer to our surroundings and allowing them to really enrich our own craft and our own experiences to bring more layers and texture to what it is that we're working on.
It's you, from the definition you gave earlier on, you said explore the meaning, and then it's a mixture of both. Not rushing. Paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know when an ordinary moment is worth writing about?
I think every ordinary moment is worth writing about. It's just
Every
single
moment.
You can dive into every single moment and find something worth reading, because everything is beautiful and wonderful. I mean, that's an exaggeration. Not everything is beautiful and wonderful, but there's something of value.
I mean, they say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, if you look at it well enough, it might become beautiful. Depends on who's looking.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when we even the most mundane moments in our lives can be filled with awe and wonder. And I think that it just takes some deeper looking. And, just even our own structures as humans, we're walking around with all of these biotic bacteria and, fungi and like other creatures that are like calling us home. And without them, we don't live, we don't function. That's kind of amazing. So like that, just in our simple existence, is something worth exploring. So I think, but I mean, to be fair, I can't write about every single ordinary mundane moment in my life, because it's too much, right? Yeah. So I think when it comes down to choosing, when there are certain things, I think when we're slowing down ourselves enough to pay attention, objects or moments will speak to us in some way. And it's probably a mystical thing, that, we're suddenly drawn to whatever creature or whatever interaction grabs our attention, and it just won't let us go. All right, well, that's something to explore. Why was I so drawn to that particular shell on the beach? Mm-hmm. Or what was it about that conversation last week that just won't let me go? Well, let's explore it and write through it and see what it has to offer us.
I like that. But sometimes I feel like, it's like when a guy likes a girl, but then the girl likes another guy. There are ordinary moments that call on to us that, okay, notice me, look at me. But then there are other moments that we're looking to look up, like to notice or say, probably if this happened in our life, that would be a lovely story. And so these are the things that it's like, oh yeah, I mean, you had breakfast today. That was a lovely story. Pay attention to me. Not really.
Yes.
So it's not
Yeah.
my type.
Yes, right. Yeah, there's like
Uh,
an attraction or something. Like we're drawn to it for some reason, and it's like calling to us. Like I'm looking out my window right now because there's a bird on the pond behind my house it's called an aninga. Are you familiar with an aninga?
no.
No. So this duck, it's a duck that
Oh, it's
swims.
a duck. You should start
Yeah.
with that. I do know ducks.
Yes, this particular kind of duck swims with its whole body submerged in the water, and it's just its head up outside of the water
Oh,
like this.
yeah.
And it looks like a snake in the water. And that's the kind of creature that I just want to sit with and write about and see what about this bird, this duck keeps drawing me to it. Like, I just can't stop focusing on it. I'm attracted to it for some reason.
Yeah.
And I just want to explore. It might not go anywhere. Maybe that piece of writing will just be for me to experience this delight and joy in the process of creation. And it's a total junk piece of writing, but I got to experience something beautiful. And that alone is worth the time and effort, I think.
Yeah. I love us to do something. Take a look at your most recent work, and you tell us which of them is mundane, and because and then I get to ask you whether the mundane chose you or you chose the mundane.
Okay.
Yeah. So the work we started with started conversation with to say 1 million times. Wow. I think I got the title right this time.
Yes.
Yeah. It's I know it's a collection of essays and a mix of poetry. So which of the okay, I can't ask you which is your favorite because it's like telling the mom to pick a
Right.
favorite child. Yeah, but which of them would you say in terms of mundane, like in terms of the mundane of the whole collections, which of them would you say, okay, this essay is about this. This is boring and mundane, but I wrote about it. It was interesting to me.
Well, the first piece that comes to mind in the book is actually a poem that was at the writing of it or the experiencing of it turned the mundane into something more than what I expected. And we were taking a train ride up Pikes Peak, and my daughter was complaining because she hadn't seen any animals out the window yet. And she said, I just wish we would see more wildlife. And I looked out the window and you couldn't see any animals. But as I was writing about this, I realized the whole scene was wildlife. Everything out the window was wildlife. How dare we ask for the animals to trot out and make themselves known to us, in this moment. And so being able to, that poem gave me an entry point into seeing the natural world in a greater, more illuminated way of the wonders that were happening outside the window that we are so quick to pass over because they don't seem particularly special. The moss growing on that log is not a big deal until you look up close at it, or you're looking at the mushrooms that are growing on the forest floor. Also not really that impressive, but they are part of this whole larger ecosystem that really can conjure that sense of awe and wonder the closer you look. So that writing process really started with the mundane world outside the window and what we were complaining about not seeing, to being able to see something much more large and grand in that moment. So a lot of the essays, though, in general, in my book start with those kinds of experiences. Just average conversations with parents, or sitting around a campfire, or taking a hike, or riding in the car. There's a lot of driving in my road trip, which is perfect time for reflecting and writing reflective pieces that move beyond the present into the past and into the future. And so all of those are, really mundane moments that springboard into something deeper or something more thought-provoking to try to
What's something deeper
yeah.
for you?
Hmm?
What's something deeper for you? Like when you use the word deeper, thought-provoking, what comes to mind based on your own experience and what you've
Sure.
written?
So one of the essays early in the book, while I'm driving in one of the more boring landscapes of America, I am writing about my teenage boys were in the back seat and they're playing video games the whole time. And I use that moment to reflect upon engagement with beauty and with awe, the desire to have them, to really wrestle with what is real and the virtual world versus the physical world. A desire as a parent to dig deeper into what's my role in helping them to experience something that's beyond the virtual. So those are kinds of moments where I feel like I try to go below the surface of just my annoyance that my children are not paying attention to what's happening outside the car, and then digging in deeper to that. Well, what's my role in that, and how are they being formed and shaped by this experience? What's my role in helping them form memories? Also, they're not going to remember many things that I think ought to be memorable, and they will remember things that'll be like, why do you remember that? So really exploring those kinds of things, and using the situation in order to springboard deeper into the story, what's really going on here. My own anxieties as a parent and the control that I have, or none. I have no control because they're their own people. So those kinds of things are maybe some examples.
They are their own people. That would
Yes.
be a nice title for a book.
Yes.
They are their own people.
Yes, it's a hard thing for a parent to remember because we created them.
Especially moms.
Yes.
One of the favorite lines is like, yeah, I give birth to you. So when they become grown, they're like, Mom, I was like, you. I was like, I breastfed you. It's like, yeah.
Yes. Right. Thanks for the reminder.
I was like, oh, you're ashamed? Why are you ashamed? I don't know. That's what African moms do. Like, oh, are you ashamed? No, you're not a big boy. You're not a big boy. Like, you're still my baby.
Yes. Oh, that's great.
It's
Ours
crazy.
here is, I changed your diapers. So it's the same kind of thing.
And I think that's what's lovely about the ordinary, is because it's ordinary, it's easy to relate to. Writing a story about that a mom can say, oh yeah, that's totally me. I was like, yeah, despite the culture, despite the nationality, despite even though it's an American writer or an African writer, I can read the story and say, this is the struggle I have. I wake up thinking, how do I take care of my kids? How do I get a job or get paid, to feed them? That's a common struggle. That's ordinary, going to your job and wondering if you're going to get fired, and if you get fired, what's going to happen. These are things that has nothing to do with whether you're black, white, or, from Nigeria or America. It's common. And that's what makes a story such that you write a story and people are like, oh, wow, this Sarah just has a way of, there's something she knows that she's not telling us. She just has a way of writing. I see myself in the book, and it looks like a mirror because when I look at it, it's it reflects me because most of it is ordinary.
Yes, that's one of my favorite things about good writing, is when a particular person's real human experience translates into a universal truth, where you can exactly like you said, I see myself in this work, even if we are completely different humans. The human experience, that universal, meets us in that moment, and we can feel what that person has gone through and can relate to what they're saying. Oh, that's a mark of a good writing, that right there, and
Yeah,
just
I think Shakespeare
transcend.
said it. Shakespeare said in the poem, in one of his sonnets, he was like, the job of a writer is to make the old seem new and the
Mm-hmm.
new seem old.
Mm-hmm. That's
Uh,
good.
And I
Yes.
think for the context of this conversation, the job of the writer is to make the ordinary extraordinary and the extraordinary ordinary. To
Yeah.
to take something that I know that in my lifetime I might never experience, but bring it to a way that it's a fantastic experience, but it's ordinary to me. I see, even though
Yeah.
it's something I know that maybe in a years I might never experience. Like for example, you stay in a stable country, and someone might be writing about war, abuse, and all those things, but that for you is an extraordinary experience. And for someone to write it in a way that you read it and still be able to relate and connect and see yourself in it, that for me, it's lovely writing.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely.
One of the things when you fill the form, booking the time, and one of the things I noticed you said about your most recent work is that you blend nonfiction and poetry. And was it like, I'm curious, like, how did you move from a place of, okay, I write essays and then I write poems to, I'm going to read a work that makes it nonfiction with poetry? What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, to be honest, it didn't come to me as an idea. My editors suggested it. They
Oh,
said, "Sarah, we love your poetry. Why don't you consider writing poems in between each of these essays?"
yeah.
And I loved that idea because both genres are really near and dear. I love them for different reasons. And so it started with their suggestion, but then when I got to the actual writing of the material, one of the things that the thing that I love the most about the essay is the ability to see into the way that the writer is processing a moment. You're not just getting the story, but you're also getting the internal wrestling and the work of figuring something out in the
Yeah.
essay. And then the poem does something totally different. There's no space for that processing in a poem. A poem is, let's look at this. This is the thing. This is the moment. This is the experience. And it's like a photograph in words, or something like that, where you have a thing that you want to say or capture or remark upon that has affected you in some way, and then you're going to move on. It's just this little like piece of chewing gum or something, whereas an essay is a whole pack of gum, and you
How
just have
did we get here? Ah, well,
so that's, I think, that's the background of why I have both poetry and essays in the book, and also because the poems have a way of capturing or of inviting readers into an experience in a different way than an essay does, I think, because you hopefully with a poem you're bringing your own vision and an experience into that space, just like you would with an essay, but there's a little, I don't know, there's just one emotion, one purpose, one vision that you're trying to accomplish in that space, I guess.
oh,
Sounds like a plant, sounds like a thing.
how do you decide which form a piece wants to become?
I think with um, when there is something that I don't know if I don't know how something is going to go from the start, I start with it as an essay. I'm a lyrical writer. I bring poetry and the tools of poetry into my essay writing as well, because I want the words and the music, the language to be beautiful sounding. I think the way that something reads needs to also be read beautifully, and be pleasant to listen to.
Yeah.
And so from a subject matter standpoint, there are some subjects for me that are too complex to live within a single poem. Maybe they could be a whole series of poems, but
What's an example of such a subject?
hmm. Okay, well, I write a lot about my dad in various books that I've written and in different mediums as
Media.
well, media. And so sometimes I will I have a poem about my dad, um in one particular moment in in my life with him. And it's like a snapshot of that particular moment. And then I have another essay in this book that I have an essay about my changing relationship with my dad that includes a conversation that we had and dissecting why did this conversation affect me so deeply, and showcasing ways that we were interacting that hopefully communicate both the love and the struggle in our relationship. And I don't think I could have achieved to that depth the complexity of the relationship in that essay in a single poem. I might get a piece of it, but I'm not going to be able to explore the breadth of it for this particular season that I'm in.
Huh.
So I think sometimes some things just say, I'm a poem. You need to write me as a poem today. Other times I set out to write poems, and occasionally they turn into essays. So a lot of times it's just my intention about a thing. Am I writing poetry today? Do I want to explore, or do I want to explore something that's going to take a lot more processing on the page, that I'm still trying to figure out the question and try to get towards an answer.
Yeah. If you had to pick one, hypothetically speaking, if you had to pick one, you could either write poetry or essays. Which would you pick? I know I'm asking you like an impossible question, but just bear with me.
If I had to pick one, I probably would pick essays, because I could still use all the tools of the poet in the essay and kind of disguise poetry
in the middle
essay.
of the poem. You could just chip in one poem quickly and then move on to the next thing. And
exactly.
Well, technically, I mean, it's still an essay.
Yeah. I just deleted the line breaks.
Good one. I see what you did there. Oh, wow. Okay. Now, for most people, when they see poetry, because it's short, it's concise, they think there's this basic assumption, and which I don't believe it's true, that it's quicker and faster to write. For you, which comes easier in terms of writing a complete piece? Is it poetry or essays?
I think it has less to do with the form for me than it does just the piece itself. Sometimes there are essays I have written in one afternoon that have been finished and done when I've put down the pen or stopped typing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just wrote that whole 10-page essay and it doesn't need any revisions. And it like, how did that happen? And then there can be poems that will take me years to finish, and vice versa. Sometimes I finish a poem in a morning, and other times it's taken me a decade to write an essay. And so I think I don't find a particular form to be more efficient or take me a shorter or longer period of time. It's more that like polish that may take a lot of extra work. Because sometimes like I'll have ideas for a poem and I'll get like 12 lines written down. I'm like, this isn't what I wanted it to say, but I'm not done with this. So I'll like take the sculpture that's partly finished and put it away somewhere on a shelf and be like, maybe I'll get back to that when I'm inspired again, and I'll be able to rework it and chisel away a little bit more, and hopefully eventually something will emerge from that process. So yeah, I don't see a particular difference between the two in that processing. At least not for me.
Have you ever found yourself doing the traditional upgrade where you say, well, if you have an iPhone 4, you can bring it, I don't know if there's something like that, and we'll upgrade it to iPhone 17, where you're like, okay, well, I mean, this was a poem I wrote, 10 years ago. Yes. It's a lovely poem, but I feel like it's just losing potential. It could also be an essay or a book itself.
Yes. Yes, I have, actually.
Which of your books?
So I have a poem in my first book of poems called Sunday Worship. I think it's either Sunday Morning or Sunday Worship, and it's about growing up on a farm and picking sweet corn in the morning. And yeah. I love the poem. I love the language of it. I love the rhythm of it. It's really beautiful to me. I think it's a really beautiful poem that preserves a moment in time for me. And a couple of years after that poem was published, I started working on an essay that is in my collection, American Honey, that explores uh, female sexuality and attraction and beauty, and trying to understand why I like femininity and
Yeah.
what forms me as a person. And I realized that that poem needed to be the beginning of that essay. And so I did what I just described to you. I deleted the line breaks and I made a few little tweaks and adjustments. And that poem ultimately is the beginning of this essay now that is called Somebody's Daughter, that explores visual images of beauty and what seeing different images of beauty in women as a young girl did to my formation. So I've done that kind of thing at least once.
Do you sometimes, I guess the word wouldn't be wonder. Do you sometimes worry that you might end up Frankenstein the poems and the essays together, where you're trying to create something and then it becomes into
Yes.
this
Yes.
monster? We're like, oh yeah, I was like, you
Life.
made me.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. There's been there are some poems that I feel like they're just never going to be I've tried to mash them together, with I had this idea and I had this idea, and they're just like now this really odd looking creature that is very much a Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Frankenstein's
Oh.
monster, I should say. It's not Frankenstein.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the closest literary, example I could think of.
Yes, that's
Someone
good.
tried to create something and ended up creating something. I can't even remember the whole folklore behind Frankenstein, but there was an intention, but then it ended up becoming something else. Wow. So nonfiction and poetry. Do you consider yourself to be a professional writer?
I do.
Professional,
yeah. It's taken me a long time to feel comfortable saying that, but I now the majority of the work that I do on a regular basis is writing and
What kind of
developmental
writing?
editing. Well, I do for pay. I do a lot of marketing and course development writing,
Let's
that
step back
kind
a
of
bit.
thing.
Let's step back a bit. What do you do for pay, like professional? Okay, I'm using the word professional too much. Yeah, like how writers have a full-time job. What's your full-time job?
So my full-time job is as a writer, but it's not creative writing. I mean, it is, all writing can be creative writing, but I write a lot of marketing content, emails, social media
Copywriting.
posts.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Oh wow.
And
Wow.
then I do some developmental editing, so I'll help other people with their writing and help get their writing better. And then I also do some video script writing as for pay, and also some spiritual writing. I help with like devotional writing or faith-based work as well. So a lot of writing actually is what I now do for a living, which is wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was people like you they had in mind when they coined the word writer. Yeah, because
It brings me so much joy. It
you
is.
have so many adjectives. That's where, like, I mean, I think we should just leave the word writer for now, because we can't just say she's a creative writer, but she also does this other writing. So how are we going to say she also does copywriting? Okay, if we say copywriting, let's just say she's a writer.
Yes.
That's all enough. I
Yes.
leave the rest to imagination.
Right. Yes. Well, I've always laughed because I can't relate to the like tortured artist image. I like the writing brings me so much joy and fills me so much with energy that, after 4 or 5 hours of just going at it, I'm like buzzing. I can hardly contain myself. Whereas others feel like, oh my gosh, this is such work. It isn't work for me, which I feel is a wonderful gift that I get to experience, on a pretty regular basis. So it is a delight.
Wow. There's a quote, I can't remember who said this. I'm trying to remember the person, but maybe you help me out here. And he was like, if you don't have what's worth writing, then live a life worth writing about. I think it's Benjamin Franklin. I'm not sure,
Mm.
but it's one of those persons. And do you sometimes feel like, I know we started this conversation with paying attention to the ordinary, but do you sometimes feel like, you could live an extraordinary, I'm not saying your life is not extraordinary, but you know how
Mhm.
writers sometimes they dream that, well, maybe I could be Ahab and the whale fighting over the way.
Right.
Yeah, do you sometimes wish that, okay, you know, of course, that's where fiction comes in, but sometimes wish that, I could do this thing and, then have a lovely story to write about.
I think I did earlier in my life. I had those kinds of feelings. When this is somewhat related. When my children were young, they probably were 6, 5, and 1, like really little. And I was in just the thick of young children life. That my whole world besides work revolved around their care. I was trying to write poems all of the time in every little crevice I could find to write poems. And I had a mentor at the time who was in his late 70s, and I would send him poems electronically through email, and then his wife would print them off for him because he refused to use the computer, and he would write notes back on them and send them back to me in the mail. And it was just this really wonderful mentorship during that season of my life. But I remember complaining to him about how there just was not enough time to write. When was I ever going to find the time to write? I had these little kids. And he said, Sarah, everything that you're doing in your life is writing. This is all pre-writing. You're taking care of your children. You're living the life that will enrich your work. And you like, just be in it, be present to what's happening instead of looking for the moments
Yeah,
away from
attention.
what's happening in order to write about it. And that was a real gift in perspective for me, because sometimes I'd be agitated that I didn't have time to go and sit and write because my children needed me. Well, now my children don't need me. They're gone. They're
Okay. So what have you done with the time now?
writing, thankfully,
Yeah,
and
thankfully.
exploring the world and, trying
Yeah.
to get out in nature. But at the time, it was very frustrating. I was impatient with that process, and I really appreciated his perspective on living your life so that there is material to actually write about, whether it's ordinary material or extraordinary material. The ironic thing is that the basis of my book could be considered extraordinary. Oh, she goes on a whirlwind tour of the United States and goes to all these really beautiful places. But the whole book is me writing about my very ordinary life experience and, finding the extraordinary in that within the setting of some really beautiful places. But I don't actually write that much about the extraordinary places. They're just like a springboard, like I said, back into the ordinary in order to discover what's so extraordinary about our lives in the first place. Yeah.
It's easy to say, if I had this, I would have been a better writer. And then you have this. I remember there was a time when I was like, oh, I wish I had a typewriter. That was like a couple of years ago. I was like, before I had the computer and all these devices. I could have
Mhm.
typewriter and all that. I got a typewriter and then I was like, I wish I had a laptop.
Yes.
And now I'm like, hmm, I think I have what I wish for. There's really nothing more that I could wish for now.
Yes.
So what are we
So
doing
now
with
what?
it? Now
Yes.
what? Yeah. And I think in those times, that's where, regular journaling comes in so that, you kind of take some quick snapshots of the things because, those things we're paying attention, they could happen, but then, 5 years from now, we're not exactly sure if we're going to remember that, someone made you smile, made you laugh. So many things are going to happen in the next 5 years. So we want
Yeah.
to make sure that, we're paying attention and we kind of capture them so that when we look at it, it can take us back memory lane. So yeah, now I remember.
Yes. Yes. I really relied for the writing of this book, I relied on a couple of tools because I didn't write it in the moment. Obviously, I was traveling. So I used on my cell phone's notes app to take notes as I was going. If I saw something that attracted my attention, I
Yeah.
jotted it down real quick because I didn't carry a pad and a pencil, which I could have. But it was easier to use my phone. I
Yeah.
took a lot of pictures as well. And then every night on that road trip, I would take some time to journal about the day. What did I notice? What was I thinking about? What happened that stood out in the course of the day. And then I just set it aside until I got back and started the real writing process, which I didn't really begin until a year after the trip. So I had to go back and really refresh my memory because there were some things that really stood out still. But it'd
Yeah.
been a full year in trying to go back and process what was it that happened. I also used Google a lot to go back and look at like, what was that campsite like? So technology was my friend.
Yeah. Wow. Earlier on at the beginning of the conversation, you decided with the word pay attention. And when it comes to pay, anything that has to do with pay, usually if we don't really budget for it, it doesn't really happen. We know what it means. Like when the bees like, well, I mean, they didn't really notify me. I could have allocated for that. I'm curious. You mentioned journaling, taking pictures. You do nonfiction, taking pictures, and taking notes, and using technology. I'm curious. Is this a practice you do when you're actively working on a project? Or is it something you just do day to day? So that's when you're like, okay, I think I should work on the project. What do we have in the journal notes?
Yeah. Well, when I was working on that project, it was definitely intentional during that road trip. However, now, it's funny. I didn't keep a daily journal for most of my children's lives, the young lives. But in the last year, I've returned to journaling on a daily basis, partly to center myself around the things that bring me joy and peace so that I'm paying attention throughout the day. I know I'm going to sit down and write about something later in my journal. What is it what's in the world that's attracting me and drawing my attention? So that's become a regular routine in my life again. And I'm not doing it with any particular vision for a future project, but I know it's there if I have an idea and decide I want to get into it. I also will stop I often will get ideas when I'm reading somebody else's work. And like, oh, I have, there's something that triggered here. And I try to pay attention to those moments instead of letting them slip by and say that I'm going to get back to it later or I'll remember later. I
Yeah.
usually will stop and write down whatever it was. I had that happen with an idea for a poem about a week or two or so ago about clouds. It was really mundane. But the visual image that I had gotten in that moment and the idea I knew would not be there for me if I waited until the day that I have dedicated for my personal writing. Because I try to take Thursdays are my days where I try to take time to do the writing that isn't paid, that is just my artwork. So this was like a Tuesday. And like, oh, I'm not going to be able to work on this until Thursday. So I put like the notes into my phone and had them ready for when I was going to be able to sit down and process that some more. So it has become a daily ritual of both like self-care and also material for future projects.
Okay, so I just want to get something clear. You're a project writer, like, of course, you do writing, either professionally or otherwise, but you're a project writer that's okay. I want to work on this. I'm going to start working, and then you're done with it, and there is that gap where you're like, okay, till you get
Yeah.
on to the next thing, and versus the other kind of writer who's just writing every day and doesn't really matter what they're working on.
Yes. I'm probably more of a project writer now than I used to be. I used to just write until something came together and was like, oh, I guess this is the project.
Yeah.
But now, the last couple of years, besides the book that just came out, I've been working on poems around climate change and our engagement with creation and how do we and looking at different ways that humans are doing positive things and negative things to Earth. And that's been a poetry project that I've been working on for the last couple of years. And so I know when I sit down to write, I'm going to be writing about some angle related to those subjects. And sometimes it's, something inspirational that's happened to me during the last week or two. And then other times it's something that I've read that I want to respond to. And so that's an ongoing project that I'm working on right now. And then the book, To Say 1 Million Times Wow, was a project I knew I was writing this particular travel memoir. So I had a goal to begin with. My earlier books, the two poetry collections I have and the two essay collections, all began as individual pieces. There wasn't a big vision in the future of like, I'm writing about my marriage in this book and I'm writing about my, whatever. So it was more after the fact of trying to figure out what is the form and the structure that this has to be or will become. How do these individual pieces that are disparate from one another come together? So I've
it was
worked
more like
both ways.
you were a writer and then eventually you became a curator and you sat down and started curating your work.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Yes. I just gave this little tip to a friend of mine who's really struggling to get going on a project because she keeps editing herself as she goes. And it came from a design show I was watching that it stuck with me. Writers have to wear two hats. They can't wear them at the same time. You have to first write recklessly. Just write as much and wherever it takes you, whatever you want to say, and go, and not start the revision process. Don't hold back. But eventually you have to put on your editing hat. And once you have the editing hat on, you have to edit ruthlessly. And I love those two, the reckless writer and the ruthless editor.
Yeah.
They're just two really different roles, and we have to be willing to do both at some point, but not at the same time. And so I try to follow that principle, even when I have a project in mind, like the ones that I've been working on. I try to at least start with the reckless writing. Like, I wonder what'll happen if I say this. I wonder what'll happen if I go this direction. And sometimes it's crap, and other times it's wonderful. So that's where the ruthless editor comes in, and she decides, well, this is crap.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, sir. You just we talked about your book To Say 1 Million Times. Wow. And you also shared paying attention, collecting works, and I think going back to the quotes, live a life worth writing about. But we just don't want to leave everything to memory because sometimes it fails. And then all the things, just the magic, if you can trap the magic in the form of journal or pictures. So now they do videos, but just a video takes a lot of time to watch through. So if you always tend to capture in the next 5 years, you might end up spending another 6 months, 1 year just to go through the material
Right.
before you even start writing. So where can listeners find your books, essays, and connect with you? I see that you have a Substack.
Yes, I have a website at sarahmariewells.com. It's Sarah with an H and then Marie, Marie Wells. And then my Substack is palisandtime palisandtime.substack.com. So you can find me in both of those places, but all of my books are on my website if they're interested.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the description so the listeners can click and go directly to the site. Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm just looking at the time and it amazes me how the time just went by so fast.
It's amazing, yes.
Like we've not even said anything. Like I still have questions to ask, but
yeah. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been great.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening to BuildWriting. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and share it with a friend who loves poetry and creative writing. Leave us a quick review or rating. It really helps others find the show. You can also connect with me, and I'd love for you to subscribe to the newsletter. He's saying all the behind the scenes things I'm experimenting on, and things I'm working on in terms of creative writing. Yeah, it'll mean a lot to me. And I shared the writing prompts, behind the scenes, speaks, and more. Yeah, a lot of things. And if you have any questions or ideas, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be sure to respond. Love to hear from you. Next week, we'll be diving into something really, really amazing. And you have to tune in next week to find out what that will be. Until next time, keep writing, keep building your craft. See you next time.